Okay, hello to all of you. Let's discuss chapter number 13. So in chapter number 13, we are going to discuss about host defenses too. So we have already talked about two levels of host defenses. We have talked about in the last week, we have discussed about the first level of host defenses, which is basically the physical and the chemical barriers, which come into play when some microorganism invades. And second level, we have talked at the level of some processes like inflammation, fever, then phagocytosis. So all these things we have discussed. So this is third level, and this is third and the final level of defense, and it involves specific immunity. So adaptive immunity acquired only after an immunizing event. So when you get some kind of infection, then this kind of third line of defense comes into play, and this level is very specific, and this involves B and the T lymphocytes. So B and T lymphocytes undergo a selective process that prepares them for reacting only to one specific antigen or immunogen. Now, what are antigens? So antigens are those molecules that can be identified by the immune system, and if the antigen, they can provoke an immune response, they're called immunogens. Usually when the bacteria or viruses attack us, some of the proteins or polysaccharides on the surface or sometimes inside them, they act as the immunogens. Now so now we are talking about specific immunity. So the antibodies, basically in this process you will see that the B lymphocytes, they are basically involved in the production of antibodies. So in this third level of immunity, the antibodies which are produced, they're very specific. They're very specific, like if the antibodies are produced against measles virus, they're not going to work against some other kind of a virus. So antibodies produced against chickenpox virus will not function against the measles virus. And also this kind of immunity also has a component which is called memory, which means that the immune system produces some kind of cells which are involved in memory, which means that if the body is again infected by the same kind of a virus or bacteria, then those cells produce antibodies, and they're produced quite fast. So memory lymphocytes have been programmed to recall their first engagement with the invader and rush to attack once again. So these are some of the stages of immunological development and interaction. So in this, basically how the different lymphocytes are involved. So first step is lymphocyte development and clonal deletion. Second is presentation of antigen and clonal selection. Then challenge of B and T lymphocytes by antigens. T lymphocyte response. So the response of T lymphocytes is called cell-mediated immunity, and the response of B lymphocytes is by the production of antibodies. So basically now we're going to talk about how these B and the T lymphocytes, they are matured. So basically all lymphocytes arise from the same basic stem cells, basic stem cell type. B lymphocytes mature in specialized bone marrow sites, and T cells mature in the thymus. Both cell types migrate to separate areas of the lymphoid organs. B and T cells constantly recirculate through the circulatory system, and lymphatics migrating into and out of the lymphoid organs. So you can see here, these are two kinds of responses. This is antigen independent development, and this is antigen dependent development. So let me zoom it a little bit. Okay. So basically lymphocytes, they are matured from the stem cells, stem cell types. So stem cell maturation in bone marrow, and these lymphocytes can be of two kinds. They can be B cells or they can be T cells. These T cells are formed in an organ called thymus, and then they can go to spleen or they can go to lymph nodes. B cells, they are matured in basically um, in the special bone marrow sites, and then they can go to spleen or the lymph nodes. This is antigen independent development, and then there is another component which is called antigen dependent. So basically what happens is so we have some cells in our body which are called antigen presenting cells. When they come in contact with the antigen, so antigen is processed by a phagocytic cell. In this case, like this is called a dendritic cell. So antigen is processed by a phagocytic cell, and then the dendritic cell displays antigen and presents it to the T helper cells. So you can see that this is the dendritic cell, and now it is presenting antigen on it, okay, and it presents it to the T helper cells. There are three different kinds of T cells: T helper cells, T regulatory cells, and T cytotoxic cells. So dendritic cells, they present these antigens to the T helper cells. And these T helper cells, so these are naive cytotoxic cells, can be activated by dendritic cells with the same. So there are another kind of cells, as I said, cytotoxic cells. They are also activated by the dendritic cells, which are presenting the antigen. So when they present these antigens to the T helper cells, these T helper cells basically then stimulate the B cells, and the activated B cells, they form plasma cells, and the plasma cells, they form the antibodies. Okay, so antigen comes in contact with dendritic cells, which are like antigen presenting cells, and they present the antigen to the T helper cells. T helper cells activate B lymphocytes, then B lymphocytes form plasma cells, they form antibodies, and these dendritic cells, they can also activate the T cytotoxic cells. Okay. So this slide basically explains what I just said, so I can quickly tell you about it. Oops, sorry. So when pathogen carrying antigens cross the first line of defense, resident phagocytes migrate to the site. We have already talked about phagocytosis. Tissue macrophages ingest the pathogen and initiate an inflammatory response. Dendritic cells ingest the antigen and migrate to the nearest lymphoid organ, where they process and present antigen to the T and the B lymphocytes. Okay, that's what we just discussed in that slide. Now, next topic is basically the role of markers and receptors in presentation and activation. All cells have a variety of different markers on their surfaces for detection, recognition, and cell communication. So there's a very important marker on our cells, which is called major histocompatibility complex, which is also called MHC complex. So one set of genes that codes for human cell markers or receptors, that's the major histocompatibility complex. It gives rise to series of, so there are genes, so in our cells, there are genes for these kind of markers, and they are so these genes basically give rise to glycoproteins. So what are glycoproteins? They are proteins with sugar chains attached to them. So they give rise to series of glycoproteins. So these genes which are coding for MHC complex, they code for glycoproteins, give rise to series of glycoproteins found on all cells except red blood cells. They are also called HLA, human leukocyte antigen system. These markers play a role in recognition of self by immune system and in rejection of the foreign tissue. And there are three classes of MHC cells. Class 1 genes code for markers that appear on all nucleated cells, display unique characteristics of self, allow for recognition of self molecules and regulation of immune reactions. Class 2, they also code for immune regulatory markers found on macrophages, dendritic cells, and B cells, are involved in presentation of antigen to T cells. Class 3 genes encode proteins involved with complement system. Now you can see here, this is a cell, this is the membrane of the cell, this is the cell which is showing class 1 MHC molecule. So class 1 MHC molecule found on all nucleated cells, and say this is the type of white blood cell which is showing the class 2 MHC. So class 2 MHC, this is the class 2 MHC found on some type of white blood cells. So they also have MHC1 and MHC2 because white blood cells are nucleated cells, and MHC complex is found on all nucleated cells. So class 2 MHC found on some type of white blood cells, class 1 molecules here also, of course. Okay. So there are some cells involved in our immune system which have these markers which are called CD markers. They're called cluster of differentiation. Over 300 CD molecules have been named, and many are involved in immune response. So most important are CD3, CD4 and CD8. So CD4 are found on T helper cells, CD8 are found on C type cytotoxic cells. So lymphocyte receptors, which we just talked about. So major role is to accept or grasp the antigen in some form. So B cells have receptors. B cells have receptors that bind antigens. T cells have receptors that bind antigens that have been processed and complexed with MHC molecules on the presenting T cells. So B cells have receptors that are going to bind to antigen, and T cells have receptors that bind to antigen that have been processed and also has been complexed with the MHC molecule on the presenting cell surface. So when challenged with antigen, both B and T cells proliferate and differentiate. A clone or group of genetically identical cells is created. Some clones are memory cells that will ensure future reactiveness against a specific antigen. And B and T cell responses differ. So basically B cell response is more in the formation of antibodies, and T cell response is more cell mediated response because it involves in the T helper cells. T helper cells actually stimulate B cells. Then there are T cytotoxic cells, and also there are T regulatory cells, which we are going to discuss soon. The three functional types of T cells are T helper cells. They activate macrophages, assist B cell processes, and help activate cytotoxic T cells. So this all information is there in the slide which we just talked about. Then regulatory T cells control the T cell response by secreting anti-inflammatory cytokines and preventing proliferation. Cytotoxic T cells leads to the destruction of the infected host cells and other foreign cells. So we already know how B cells they respond. When activated, B cells divide and give rise to plasma cells, and plasma cells they release antibodies into the tissue and the blood. These are some of the differences between B and T cells. You can go over them. Okay, the last topic in this chapter is about the immunity. So immunity can be natural immunity or it can be artificial immunity. Natural immunity is the immunity which we just acquire through natural processes, like we get some infection and infection goes away. Your body develop antibodies. That's a natural immunity. Artificial immunity is when we get immunity or we get immunized by some artificial means, by getting some vaccination or all that. So natural immunity, any immunity that is acquired through normal biological experience of an individual. Artificial immunity, protection from infection obtained through medical procedures such as vaccines and immune serum. Now what is active immunity? Now again we can classify immunity into two kinds. One is active immunity, another is passive immunity. Active immunity is that immunity when your body receives some immune stimulus and your body has to produce the antibodies. Okay, so that is active immunity, when your body occurs when an individual receives immune stimulus that activates B and T cells to produce immune substance such as antibodies. And it also creates memory that renders person ready for quick action upon re-exposure of the same antigen. So in the active immunity, not only antibodies are produced, there are memory cells also created, because when again you are infected with the same organism, then your memory cells are going to produce quickly the antibodies. It requires several days to develop, lasts for a relatively long time. It can be stimulated by natural or artificial means. Passive immunity is when you directly get the antibodies. Okay, occurs when individual receives antibodies from another human or animal. So when you get the ready-made antibodies, in that case your body does not need to produce antibodies on its own. Recipient is protected for a short period of time, even though they have not had prior exposure to the antigen. Lack of memory. So in this case, there is no memory. It has short-term effectiveness. So these are natural immunity. So you can see this child getting some of the antibodies from mother's milk. This is when you get infected, and these are when you're getting vaccinated. That's the artificial immunity. This is some history about the vaccinations. You can go over it. I'm going to just skip it. So we just talked about passive immunization. So passive immunization is basically when you get the ready-made immunoglobulins. So first attempts involved the transfusion of horse serum containing antitoxins to prevent the tetanus and treat the diphtheria. Antisera from animals has now been replaced with human products. Now these days, human plasma can be given, which means human ready-made antibodies can be given. So that all comes under the passive immunization. So immunoglobulin extracted from the pooled blood of many human donors. Processing concentrates antibodies to increase potency and eliminate potential pathogens. Most useful in patients who have diminished ability to mount their own immune response. This is artificial active immunity. So this is basically talking about when you are when a person is basically given an immune stimulus, and the body itself produces the immune response in the form of antibodies, and also it gets the memory cells. So stimulates primary response and a memory response. Prime the immune system for future exposure to a virulent pathogen. If the pathogen enters the body, the response will be immediate, powerful, and sustained. So these are some of the qualities of an effective vaccine. It protects against exposure to natural wild forms of the pathogen, have low level of adverse side effects or toxicity, stimulates both antibody and cell-mediated response, long-term lasting effects, which produces memory. It should be inexpensive. So the vaccines, they can be of different kinds. They can be whole cell vaccines, they can be subunit vaccines, they can be conjugated vaccines, they can be DNA vaccines. So in the olden times, when the vaccines actually started, at that time, basically the more vaccines were whole cell vaccines, which means the whole bacteria or whole virus was given to the individual. So there are some negative things associated with them. So now in the current era, more vaccines are either DNA vaccines or subunit vaccines. So whole cell vaccines can be live attenuated vaccines, or they can be killed cells or inactivated vaccines. So let me go here. So in the whole cell vaccines, they can be either whole cell killed vaccines, or they can be or they can be attenuated, which means when they are killed, so whole cell means the whole bacteria or virus. When they're killed, they are all killed, they are dead, but the bacteria, they are dead, which means when they put into the body of the individual, they are dead, they do not cause the disease, but they have antigens on them, so that can evoke the immune response. So in that case, there won't be a disease, but immune response will be evoked. Then second is the live attenuated, in which the bacteria or virus is not dead, it is weakened, so it cannot cause the disease, it's not virulent, but it can evoke the immune response. Subunit vaccines are when the complete bacteria or virus is not injected into the body, but a part of it is injected, because some subunit, maybe some part of some part of its membrane, or some part of any part of the cell can be taken, and that will basically evoke the immune response but will not cause a disease. DNA vaccines basically involve taking some specific gene of the organism, of the bacteria or virus, and then that part of the gene can be put into plasmid, and a recombinant plasmid can be made, and then that can be injected into the individual, and that plasmid, which is having the bacterial or viral gene, is going to make the proteins in the human cells, and those proteins are going to evoke the immune response. This basically talks about the route of administration of vaccines. It can be subcutaneous, intramuscular, or intradermal. Or they can be nasal or oral vaccines also, and they are available for only few diseases. They stimulate IgA protection on mucous membranes. They are easier to give and more readily accepted. Now the last thing is adjuvant. So some of the vaccines, the adjuvants are added. So what do? So they are special binding substance required by some vaccines. They basically enhance the immunogenicity, prolongs antigen retention at the injection site. They precipitate the antigens and holds it in the tissue so that it will be released gradually. The most common adjuvant is alum, which is aluminium hydroxide salts. So they are basically added with the antigens, and they basically help in the enhancement of the immunogenicity. So that's all from this chapter. If you have any question, let me know.